Okay, well, welcome everybody to this Public Accountability Board meeting for February. I don't think this is going to be a long meeting, but it is a very important meeting because we're determining the budget for South Yorkshire Police and for the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner. We're setting the precept and we're publishing the Police and Crime Plan for the coming year. So a lot to do, but in a relative short period of time, I think. So if I work my way down the agenda quickly then, well, first of all, welcome and apologies. I think June has got a list of the apologies that we've got. Is there anybody who you know about who you want to apologise for who's not likely to be on that list? If not, we'll move swiftly on. I won't go through everybody who is here, just welcome you. And if you do speak, perhaps you could identify who you are. Just to remind you that we are being both live streamed and also filmed and recorded, and it will be uploaded on our website eventually. Item 3 then, announcements. I'm not aware of any, unless Chief Constable, you have anything there? No, don't think so. Item 4, public questions, not received any that I'm aware of. Item 5, urgent items. Again, I don't think there are any. Item 6, declarations of interest. Are there any for this particular meeting? And the subject matter before us? No. So item 7, then the Police and Crime Plan, which is on pages 3 to 32 of the pack, or at least it says that here. And Michelle, would you like to introduce? You've got a little report ahead of that.
Yes, Commissioner, just in very brief terms, just trotting through a very short paper that's on the cover of the plan. So you are required to produce a plan of your policing priorities. You did so after the election last summer, and you were one of the first to produce a plan and then comply with the specified information order around reporting on performance on your website and against the national crime and policing measures. So you're already compliant, but you did make clear that that was a transitional plan and that you would publish a new plan as a result of the planning timetable. So this is it. This is a substantial plan that is to last your term of office. The priorities remain the same, and at 4.3 it just says that you are providing 2 underlying principles this time in the plan: putting victims first and show value for money. And there are a series of focus areas that you think deserves a special mention this time under those 3 priority areas: child sexual exploitation, serious violence, violence against women and girls, which we've just heard is now a strategic police requirement of the Home Secretaries nationally, and road safety. We describe how a performance framework will monitor progress with the Police and Crime Plan, and the force reports to your monthly Public Accountability Board as normal. You are statutorily required to take the plan to the Police and Crime Panel, which you did on the 4th of February. They gave some really helpful comments and suggestions, which we've incorporated in the draft that has been circulated with the papers. DCC Forborough has come back and included an amendment, an addition to bolster the CSE section, and the staff in the OPCC and VIU have run it through again and given some later comments. Apart from a reference to an explicit reference to homicide, which is going to be amended to the one that's in the pack now, it's all complete and ready to be published. So Fiona will effect that last amendment, and it's already with the design and print people to jazz it up and ensure we've got photographs and it's readable for the public audience, and that will then be published very shortly.
Thank you. Jazz it up.
It's a technical term under the legislation, Alan.
Okay, I wasn't totally familiar with it, but yes, I would like to. I don't want to say a lot about it because I've already spoken about it at the Police and Crime Panel and elsewhere, and we've had a good discussion around it. But just to thank those who have contributed to it in all sorts of ways from my own office, but from the Violence Reduction Unit, South Yorkshire Police, and also the Police and Crime Panel and the leaders. We met them as well. Everybody's made a contribution. We've tried to capture, where they were sensible, of course, contributions, we've tried to capture them and incorporate them into the plan. So I think it's a lot better than where it was when it started off. I don't know, Lauren, whether there's anything you wanted to say about the police and crime plan.
Thanks for the opportunity, Commissioner. No significant comment from me. I think it makes marks progress really on the previous plan and really consolidates the work that we're already doing and aligns that quite clearly.
Yes, thank you. And the only other thing I would say is, and again, we've drawn attention to that in the meetings that we've already had, is that under each of the priorities, I have this little yellow box called areas of focus, and they are the things that we will be particularly concentrating on at our future public accountability boards. It's not to say we're not interested in other areas of activity, but they will have a special focus as we go through the year. So apart from that, I think that's the police and crime plan done, and Fiona is going to take that off now and put colour around it and some photographs in it, photographs of Chief Constable with dogs and me with horses and me with a ferret or whatever will jazz it up, to use the technical term. Thank you very much, everyone. So that's our police and crime plan published. Shall we move then to item 8, which is the budget and council tax precept for 22-23, which is again a very important document, and the decisions we'll take there are important. The recommendations that Sophie, Chief Finance Officer, will be making are set out on page 35. They're all down there. I'll read them, Sophie, just quickly. So first of all, it's recommended that the PCC formally approves the following: a budget requirement of 310.7 million for the force and the OPCC, a proposed annual increase in the policing element of the council tax, the precept for 22-23 of £10 for a Band D property, taking it to £223.04 for the year. That's an increase of 4.69%. When I was looking at this, these proposals before Christmas, 4.69% seemed quite high in relation to inflation, but of course now inflation has overtaken that, so we're now under where the general inflation figures sadly are. C, to note that most properties in South Yorkshire are in bands A, 57%, and B, 17%, and C, 12%, where the increase would be 13 pence a week on band A, 15 pence a week on band B, and 17 pence for band C. So that's the impact that this precept proposal would have on properties in South Yorkshire. And then there's in D, the reserve strategy, we're to note that, set out in Appendix D, capital strategy and programme set out in Appendix E, treasury management strategy and minimum revenue provision policy statement in Appendix F. There were some recommendations in that. And then finally to note the Chief Finance Officer's statement on the robustness of estimates as set out in Section 8 of the report, that what we're proposing here holds up financially and sees us through. So Sophie, do you want to say a few words about your report?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. I was just going to run through those, so you've saved me a job there, stimmed my voice a bit. I do need to just point out that there are 2 changes that have been made since the report that went to the Police and Crime Panel on the 4th of February. One relates to some direct revenue financing, and the other is around the finalisation of the tax base, which we hadn't got the final figures for when the panel papers were produced. So they've been notified accordingly to the panel, but just to reassure everybody that it wouldn't have changed any of the precept recommendations whatsoever. Those recommendations remain as they are in this report and as went to panel. Just in terms of some key headlines, in terms of the funding settlement, which is in section 5, we received a 5.8% increase in cash increase from the Home Office, and the grant to South Yorkshire now is 233.8 million. All the government calculations around funding are based on raising the precept by the maximum of the £10, which is what's been recommended here. And on that basis, the funds will cover the current costs of police officer uplift, any national insurance increases that are coming in April, and contributions towards inflation that we're aware of. just around police officer numbers. I'm not proposing to go through this in detail, but in terms of police officer numbers, section 6 shows that. So there will be an increase by 202 officers as part of the national uplift, plus a further 18 for local uplift, which gives us 220 in total within the next financial year. PCSOs will be maintained at 126, which is an additional 10 over the current plans and what we had in this year's budget. Just moving on quickly into section 7.1, which shows the budget summary and the preset proposal for each of the council tax bands. These are the ones that perhaps members of the public will be interested in. Just regarding the medium-term financial forecast, which is later on in that section, we have had to assume that there'll be a flat cash settlement towards the latter 2 years of the MTRS, because we haven't got any further information, but that's our best estimate to date. We're continuing with our 3 legacy issues around Hillsborough, the Rotherham CSE investigations, Operation Stovewood and the civil claims. And because of those and other things, there are significant savings that need to be made and are required to balance the MTRS in the long term. Section 7.10 shows what I think we need to do around that. So there'll be clarity around the government position on future uplift, integrated planning to balance demand and growth pressures and savings locally, continuation of legacy cost funding from the Home Office and preset flexibility clarity, and post-funding CSR clarity. I do want to draw your attention to section 8 of the report, and that's the CFO's statutory statement on the robustness of estimates and reserves. I can confirm, and I've put this in the report, that the figures that have been included are the best estimates that we've got based on the most up-to-date information we have at the time of writing the report. There are some uncertainties, however, and they're outlined in section 8.1 of the report. Just in terms of reserves, Annex D shows the reserve strategy and projections. And again, as CFO, based on the robustness of estimates statutory requirement, I want to report that obviously reliance on reserves isn't a sustainable position. They can only be used once. But work is underway within the force and within the OPCC to ensure that the measures that are outlined in paragraph 7.10 are implemented effectively to try and present a more balanced budget position in the future. So just moving on to the strategies, there aren't any significant changes in the strategies except to update the numbers. There is just a piece in the Treasury Management strategy which may impact on us, but not significantly, and that's around the tightening of the prudential indicator regulations. Most of those relate to borrowing for commercial purposes, which are out of our domain, but there is an Annex A of that particular report shows what the changes have been. So that's all I'd got to say, really, Commissioner. Just to ask for your approval, please, for the recommendations, or that you consider approving those recommendations outlined in the budget report.
Thanks very much, Sophie. I think it'd be true to say that looking at the MTRS period over the next 3+ years, thinking about our reserves position, for example, we do have to take some action if we're not going to exhaust our reserves. And I notice that on page 39 in the pack that I've got, it refers to a savings team being created by South Yorkshire Police in order to find those efficiency savings, because without it we hit a point further down the road eventually where we can't get a balanced budget. I wondered, Jackie, whether you, or the Chief Constable, whether you'd say a word about that, a savings team.
Yes, so thank you, Commissioner. Just to confirm that the work is underway to populate that team. We've already got some people in post. Obviously, we're trying to make sure that that is a multidisciplinary team, so colleagues from finance, colleagues from our HR, people and organisational development, as well as analysts, project management, etc. That work is well underway, and we intend to produce an outline report for you by September in terms of our proposal for the next 3 years. So just to confirm and to reassure you that we are actively and well underway with that piece of work.
Thanks very much. It's obviously something we'll keep a close eye on and monitor as the months go by. And I think too, it's I'm glad you said that the total funding available for South Yorkshire Police is a combination of government grant and precept at a certain level, because it can be very annoying when the government says, as it does, that the funding available for the force is X, and we know that that sounds as if it's all coming from them, if it's all coming by way of grant, and of course we know it isn't. It's also precept, and it does depend on the precept being set at the level we're setting it here, and that's a point that seems quite hard to get across to some of our MPs and possibly our councillors as well. But it always assumes that the precept will be set at the level that the government is talking about, which is £10 on a Band D property. So that's what's being proposed, and I think it gives the force a good chance to do the things that it needs to do in the coming year, and hopefully get on top of crime and antisocial behaviour in South Yorkshire. Lauren, is there anything else you wanted to say or add? Or
I think, to be honest, Commissioner, most of the points have been made. I would just reiterate the point that the Home Office settlement did assume that the full £10 precept would be levied. We know that could potentially have been challenging for some of our communities, so it's not a decision that I know was undertaken easily, but establishing it does allow us really to fulfil the plans that we've got for the next financial year. And we are absolutely committed to driving out savings through our savings team. I think it's fair to say that in the past, some of our change programmes have identified non-cashable savings, so our focus now really has to be on converting cashable savings to enable us to sort of sustain delivery into the future, particularly that 3 years plus time frame.
yeah, no, it's probably hard for members of the public to differentiate between cashable and non-cashable, but there are efficiencies you can make which don't actually yield cash.
Yeah.
There are other things that you can do the job better, but actually it costs less to do it, and that's the cashable saving. So we're looking for a mixture of the two, of course.
Yeah, I anticipate as well there will be some invest to save requirements as well, particularly when we look at digital and information technology requirements. You know, in order to save money, we are going to have to spend money in some of those areas.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm happy to approve all the recommendations there, Sophie. So we've published the police and crime plan. We've got a budget for the coming year, and we have our precept proposals there, which we'll communicate to the local authorities. That will come out in People's Council tax, and the precept increase at 4.69% now turns out to be quite a bit lower, sadly, than where inflation currently is. So that's a good result for us. Thank you. Anything else on item 8 that anybody wants to contribute?
Commissioner, can I just say, please, a big thank you to FA who's my deputy, and to Debbie Carrington from the force. As you'll be aware, I've been off ill with COVID, and both Debbie and FA have been really, really great and helpful, done all the papers, etc. So massive thank you to them. Thank you.
Absolutely right, and I would link myself to that, Sophie. I think we'd have struggled to get by without Debbie's assistance from SYP and without FE in our office. So thank you to everyone. Okay, I think that's everything there then. Moving on to any other business, item 9. Is there any other business? Michelle? Nothing.
No, Commissioner. We've
Okay.
got a next PAB coming up shortly, so we'll be turning around papers for that very soon.
Okay. Lauren, anything from your side?
No, thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, well, that was, as I say, a short meeting, but very important meeting, and we've done all the business. So thank you very much indeed, everyone, and hope you have a good rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.